We got what, about 23.3? Is that what we calculated?
Yes, that's not too shabby. Welcome to a quick video on our first overlanding trip with the wife's brand new Wrangler Rubicon 4xe, which we've affectionately named Sparky. In this video I'm going to cover just a few topics. First, why the 4xe makes sense for us, but maybe not for a lot of other people. My wife's driving pattern is frequent short daily trips, so we knew a plug-in hybrid vehicle made a lot of sense to her, even with a range of only 25 to 30 miles. Most of the time she can be 100% electric. We do occasionally camp in a forest that has no roads. We're kind of establishing the trails ourselves, and a Wrangler Rubicon can be very helpful when you're doing that kind of work. Also, it's kind of nice that most of the local power here in this part of Illinois is nuclear and hydroelectric. So if you're familiar with it, you know the grid is the grid. You don't know where that energy came from on the grid. It's sourced from all over, and there are a lot of little natural gas surge stations. But nevertheless, given that most of it's nuclear and hydroelectric and most of her miles are all electric, I definitely win the virtue signaling contest hands down. Second topic I'll try to hit here is the observed fuel economy, driving from Illinois to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in hybrid mode. Third, I'll do a few quick calculations, kind of showing why EVs don't really make sense as overlanding vehicles. And I'll explain that in some detail, mostly around how long you would have to be sitting out in solar to recharge enough battery to drive a significant range back. Fourth, I'll kind of just show a few clips of the off-road capabilities demonstrated in our little forest area there with the Wrangler Rubicon. And then fifth and finally, I guess that's more than a few, I'll just hit future topics I plan to explore with the 4xe. For example, pulling our overlanding trailer. The 4xe drivetrain will not make sense for a lot of people. To determine if it might make sense for you, you really need to consider its range of 25 to 30 miles and the nature of your daily driving in terms of distance, and whether there's a time in between trips where you have access to a level 2 charger and can reestablish sufficient range to complete the day on electric use. The reports I've read of fuel economy performance in hybrid mode and not electric mode are not exciting. Others reported around 19. So far we've seen anywhere from like 19 and a half maybe to 24. So I would have to agree that's not very exciting hybrid gas mileage, but when you can stay all electric, then that's a complete game changer. I jotted down a few quick notes here about the savings of all electric mode. It's important to note that if you're going all electric, you're not yet paying road tax. I'm sure eventually we will. Now, a few assumptions. We have relatively cheap electricity here, but it is highly variable. So I assumed about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. That's lower than a lot of parts of the country. Battery capacity is 17.3 kilowatt hours, assuming you're going 0 to 100. And if you take in efficiency calculations, you actually have to supply more juice than that to go from 0 to 100. So if you assume that charge is good for about 25 miles, you get about 6.2 cents per mile on electricity versus $5 gasoline at 25 cents per mile. So that difference is almost 19 cents per mile. So for some final perspective, all in, the 4xe drivetrain cost about $10,000 more than a standard Wrangler would have. And I paid, because I did it myself, about $600 in parts to get a level 2 charger in there. With the current $7,500 tax credit then, my total cost of the 4xe versus a standard V6 Wrangler is about $3,100. So doing some quick math, you can kind of see that it would be somewhere in the order of 16,500 all-electric miles with the tax credit before I would recoup the additional costs of the 4xe drivetrain. I'll just talk over a few clips that serve to remind that this is still a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, which means it's a pretty capable vehicle. So this is just my wife having fun. She's not an experienced off-road driver. She usually just rode passenger with me on my Hummer H3, and in these clips she's getting familiar with her four-wheel drive system, driving through the forest here where again there really are no roads. This is some private land in a forest in which we're sort of cutting some crude corduroy trails through the woods. So just to address a couple of those general points, In terms of general fuel economy that we've seen so far with our 4xe, we were getting about 23 miles per gallon as hybrid mode took over after the battery got down to less than 1%. So starting out in hybrid, once the battery got all the way down, continuing the trip up to the UP from Illinois, we fell from about 23 miles per gallon to a bit over 19. Not sure if that was dependent on wind factors, etc., or the gradual loss of its ability to supplement with electric. Which kind of led us to the question, so with a 4xe, to go about 25 miles, we do 2.5 hours of level 2 charging. In this case, it takes about 31 amps at 240 volts. If you remember your high school physics, 240 volts, 31 amps is about 7,400 watts. So that brings me to that question about, are we ready for overlanding in pure EVs? So let's just do that math. 7,400 watts for 2.5 hours to go 25 miles. So I would need about 75 100 watt panels in sunlight for 2.5 hours for every 25 miles. To put it another way, 75 panels in sunlight for 25 hours to go about 250 miles. So no, I really don't think the concept of an overlanding EV is practical yet. But who knows, someday when there's off-grid solar charging stations or something, it'll make more sense. But to me, the plug-in hybrid is what makes this make sense. It's still the perfect vehicle for us to take on long overlanding trips. And in our day-to-day driving, it's a fantastic vehicle because we go all electric pretty much all the time. So again, our situation is a little bit unique. That's why the Jeep Wrangler 4xe made total sense for us. The combination of our enjoyment of the hobby of overlanding, along with our practical day-to-day short drives with breaks in between, they end up being 100% all electric. So then that brings us on to topic 4, which is the observed off-road capabilities of the 4xe. There's lots of videos out there where experienced Wrangler drivers compare their experience to the 4xe. I would simply say I typically go out in a 2008 Hummer H3 Alpha. It's got an LSV8. It's got ARB air locker up front, factory locker in back, generally factory suspension 33s. And this is your Wrangler Rubicon with KO2 33s on the Rubicon suspension. I gotta say, I am very impressed with a stock Rubicon Wrangler and how easily it handled obstacles out here in the forest that I would say definitely gave me a harder time in my old Hummer H3. I think the Wrangler in general is a more capable vehicle. So the 4xe is not only a plug-in hybrid, it's a very capable off-road vehicle. Finally, then kind of a last quick topic. I don't know what other kind of videos we'll make with Kathy's 4xe. When we go to the UP, we usually take my truck. In this case, because it's new and I wanted Kathy to get some experience driving her truck, we took both vehicles up there. But one thing we'll definitely do is do a video of us pulling our overland trailer. It's an M416 trailer, kind of geared up with a rooftop tent and a rack and all that. Because the 4xe, from what I've gathered, pulls trailers extremely well. Shouldn't have any trouble with that trailer. So I'll probably do that video and just compare the experience of each, see what kind of gas mileage we get in hybrid mode once the battery is worn down, pulling our little overlanding trailer. Other than that, I'm open to suggestions in the comments if there's anything else anyone would like to see on the 4xe as far as these little videos we make. Hope you enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed our most recent trip to the UP, and we are very, very happy with Sparky, the new addition to our overlanding family.